on this breakdown, let's look at just some of the things I'm doing in the background from the sort of main sort of live edit that I'm looking at. So I think I've said so a few more times than I want in this breakdown. Creating your cue points is one thing, that's fantastic. But always making sure you're bringing in the next one, you're figuring out what's your next one, and setting up that one is really important. So you can always go to that one and then always come back. You don't have to just have a forward momentum or progression of the mix. You can always go back to another one, extend things out. I've set it up, I've turned it around, played it at the cue point that I want, and why am I spinning it even more? Well, one of the reasons that could be the case is that cue point where I set it up from doesn't really work for that sort of quick transition or what I'm wanting to do right now. When I was setting up the original cue points, perhaps it could have been a different interpretation. I maybe wanted a more classical mix-in or something like that. Perhaps on this one, I've sped things up a little bit. I've switched over to another cue point of the song, and this one isn't going to work. So I've moved it slightly forward or slightly back to where there's a vocal line. So instead of going straight into the drop, we are playing it a little bit back. So there's a vocal edit there for what I need. That just is one example. Always being fluid in your cue points is just key here. Use them as just a base, right? So you're less stressed out about, your mix, okay? And then when you relax and you're into the mix, then just use them as a starting point and just quickly listen. Okay, cool. I remember this one, blah, blah, blah. And there's another cue point that I can use. Yeah. So that just use them as a go-to, but don't be just so strict on them. Like, that's got to be that one. That's it. Quickly have them so you can jump through the song and then be very flexible. Move it forward, move it back, pick a different cue point. Just be very experimental about them. So one of the things we can do in this situation is, if I've picked another cue point, right? And the song's at different tempo, okay? Say, the current song we're playing is at 130 BPM, okay? And the song that we've picked is at 125 or 126. And we don't want to increase the speed of the song as one example. Second example could be that we're running out of time. Okay, and we don't really get a chance to speed it up in time, but we have time to lower the first one musically. Okay, and that could be another example. A third example could be that you want to detune the current song without the master tempo on, because you feel that it's going to be more impactful for the song that's coming in, or musically they're going to blend harmonically better together. So that could be another reason to detune the song slightly from 130 to 125 or something like that. Another reason is that in this section you want to just draw a little more attention to things, slow things down a little bit. And for me, it's more musical to add effects, and especially at the ending of a song, to really draw it out. It's less noticeable, it's more musical in this way to just slow down. And see how when from here and detuning is slightly moving down. Okay, and nothing. Now, what happened here? Okay, I could say that it was on purpose. I could come up with different million reasons. The simple fact is I forgot to bring up the fader. Okay, and that just happens, right? Yeah. That's why you always want to give a bit of space in your cue points, right? So you have just a little bit of space. You notice here that we brought in the song, but I was so focused on, the detuning and adding in the effects, that I forgot to bring up the fader for what I wanted to do. I had brought up a song, I was focused on finding another cue point that I wanted to work with, and all this other stuff that I forgot that I need to also bring up the volume so you can actually hear what I want to do. And that happens from time to time. The key here is to be prepared for something like that. And like we talked about, the best practice is always give yourself a little bit of space with your cue points, a bar, 2 bars, just for something like this, and then you're okay, you're in the clear, it's not as noticeable. Obviously I would prefer it to be a little bit smoother, but it's just interesting. It's like just popped in my head. Michael Jackson was talking about one of his performances, that classic Billie Jean moonwalk performance, and he talked about when he did that performance, I think it was at the Grammys, when he did that moonwalk, and then he did this, the ballerina sort of, up onto the toes, and then he came back down. Watching it from our perspective, that's the coolest thing ever. And like, oh man, you went up there and then you came back down, and like, and all that. And we didn't notice anything wrong with that performance, right? It was killer, and then moonwalk, and then up on the toes and all that. But when he did a reflection on it with some reporter or whatever it was, he talked about the moment, and like they asked him, what do you think about this, etc. And he talked about how it was actually originally intended that he stay up there on his toes. That famous move, his practice, the way he had done it, was that he wanted to stay up there. But obviously, because of, there's so many things that you can't obviously calculate when you are performing in that kind of setting. You're obviously a little more excited than usual. Like the crowd, the energy, the live crowd, and everything else that's happening. It's always going to be a little bit easier when you're practicing. And you're in that situation. He did it, but then he wasn't, for some reason, he just didn't stay up there. And he was talking about the fact that, he had practice and planned for him. The original idea was him to stay in that position for a little bit longer, but that didn't happen. And he didn't make like a face or anything like that, and then make it so noticeable. He just went with it and made it so natural that you just didn't even notice. This is what I talked about in one of the other episodes, that if something is a mistake or something is not what you 100% wanted, that's okay, but don't change the facial expression, what you're doing. Don't make it noticeable that it's not 100% what you wanted. Okay, so I had that pause, right, that I wanted. And then we created that really intimate moment. And then I wanted to play it and the song comes in, okay? But then it happened. And instead of me making a face and be like, like, and then I'm done with this, and off I go. You just think very quickly, okay, why is there no sound? What's going on? And then you bring up the fader. Okay? So let's watch it one more time. Bring it back to the basics. Yep. Cool. So you really have to be just quick on your toes and just make sure you keep your professionalism, make sure you keep your focus and attention on what you're doing. Applying some of the best practices we talked about and having that breathing room, okay? Moving it back. So you saw how many times I moved around the song. I was looking for a better cue point and all that. And I gave myself a bit of that breathing room that when I came in, it was okay.